In this video I'm showing how to repair a Hoover WindTunnel 2 Rewind vacuum cleaner. This vacuum's a few years old and it's been pretty good to us for the most part, but it recently had a problem where the power button stopped working. And you can see what I mean when I press down on the power button here. It used to stick, but now it just springs right back out. And even if you hold the power button down, the vacuum still doesn't turn on, so it's completely dead in this state. I'm sure wifey thinks she's getting a Dyson, but you ain't getting no Dyson. We're gonna fix this thing up good as new.
You're all right! Yay!
I started by disconnecting the hose just to get that out of the way. Then I removed the accessories off of the side. And also removed the canister. On the back of the vacuum there's one screw to remove the top handle. And next I removed pretty much every screw that I could see on the back here. There's not really a lot of information I can add here since you're just kind of removing screws, so I'm going to fast forward through a lot of this. Once all of the screws are removed, this back panel should come right off. It should look something like this once you get it opened up. Full disclosure here, whenever I'm making videos like this, I usually tear whatever I'm working on apart ahead of time just to kind of scout it out. In my experimenting around, I had already ripped the terminals out of the back of the button here, so yours probably won't be this way. No big deal though, I went ahead and cut the wires just below the button to get it out of the mix. The button has these tabs on the side that hold it in place. This part was a little bit fiddly, but I was able to use a screwdriver to press down on the tab to get the button out. You can see what it looks like with one side removed here. The other tab's a little harder to get to since it's tucked into the plastic, but the same thing, you just have to press it down and then the button should come right out. I got the replacement button from Amazon for about 10 bucks. I'll leave a link to the one I got as well as the part number in the description. I removed the new button from the packaging, and the first thing I tested was to make sure that it clicked, which it did. So I got started putting everything back together. I fed the wiring through the buttonhole in the back plastics. The new button had the same tabs on the sides to hold it into the plastics, so I just pressed on it to seat it in place. The wires on the replacement button came pre-stripped, so I just pulled the ends off of them. I noticed that the wiring for the replacement button was 18 gauge, where the vacuum and the previous button was 16 gauge, but it didn't seem to matter. I've never had to do this exact kind of repair before, so I didn't really have the tools for it, so I picked up this crimping kit from Amazon. My plan was to use these butt connectors where you can put a wire in each end and then crimp it down to make a connection. I went ahead and stripped the black and red wires on the vacuum side to get them ready. I twisted the ends to make them easier to get into the butt connectors. Then I put a connector onto the red wire that goes to the vacuum. I used the crimpers to crimp it down. And then I did the same thing for the red wire that goes to the button. After both sides were crimped, I tugged on them just to make sure that the wiring didn't come loose. It seemed like it had a pretty good connection, so I moved on to the black wiring. Pretty much the same stuff though. I put a twist in the wiring from the button, I put a connector on it, and then I crimped it down. Then I repeated the steps for the wiring from the vacuum side, and gave it a tug just to make sure it was staying put. I'm a little paranoid about the possibility of being the one who burns the neighborhood down, so I also took some electrical tape and ran it around the connectors to add some reinforcement. All things considered, I think this was probably the easiest way of doing it rather than messing with this fuse that was between the button and the vacuum. I'm sure I could have got a soldering iron and a replacement fuse or whatever and figured it out, but it was just easier to make the connection above the fuse. Now all that was left to do was to stuff the wiring down in the channels and the plastics. I found that it was a lot easier to work with gravity and just lay the vacuum down for this step. If I was doing this over, I probably would have trimmed off some of the extra slack that came with the replacement button. To be honest though, I wasn't sure how many times I was going to screw up with those butt connectors and have to cut them off and start over again, so I wanted to leave myself lots of wire for mulligans. After I got the wires successfully down into the channels and the plastic snapped back together, I was able to start putting the screws back in. And again, there's a whole lot of screws here and not a whole lot of reason to watch me put them all in, so I'll fast forward through this part. After I was done putting all the screws in the back plastics, I sat the vacuum upright and I put the top handle back on and put that screw back in. Then I put the hose back on. Put the canister back on. And the accessories. And I plugged it back into the power to test it out. And sure enough, when I hit the power button, it roared to life. Alright, that's pretty much it for this video. Hit like if this helped you out, and thanks for watching.